first heard the word gnosis as I was reading about a group of early Christian teachings. For a long time, the church had a monopoly on truth. Our only way to understand early Christianity was through the church's lens, but then people started discovering early Christian texts that were outside of the canon. And we started to understand how diverse the early Christian movement actually was. Some of these early texts spoke of gnosis. And then in the 1800s, I think the late 1800s, a Gnostic church was formed. People have this tendency to group all these texts under one heading, Gnostic. But in truth, they're diverse. Many schools of thought are presented. Then, in I think 1945, or somewhere around there, a bunch of texts were founded in Nag Hammadi, Egypt. We call these the Nag Hammadi texts, Nag Hammadi collection. Sometime after the creation of the first Christian canon by this guy, Athanasius, the church leaders started to declare that everything that wasn't on this list was evil and should be abandoned. But in this Nag Hammadi Egypt, a group of Pachamonian monks, they decided that these texts should be preserved. For whatever reason, who knows? They buried them in big jars. We found them, and this blew away the old notions of a homogeneous, smooth transition, a apostolic succession that the church had told us about. This was a creation. This was not exactly true. But many of the texts do put forth this gnosis. Rather than simple faith, they proclaim that these truths, this God, can be experienced directly by ourselves. So they're basically asserting that instead of just believing, we can actually know the divine. I've spent a whole bunch of time studying these texts, and I think there's something even beyond this notion of divine. They speak also of an unknowable, ineffable, and I think this is very close to Dharmakaya. Dharmakaya Buddha is called Mahavairochana Buddha. So while some people might assume Gnostic to be theistic, I've tended to use the word gnosis and Gnostic as pointing to something beyond even the notion of God. There is a direct experience that opens up the ineffable to our realization. This direct experience itself is the realization, liberation spoken of by the Buddha. He says, many places, but in an early text, the Brahmajala Sutta, that there is something subtle beyond the sphere of reasoning to be experienced by the wise. And this is how I use the word gnosis now. I say, I know this, you know this, we know this, with a G. This is like this because that is like that. This is pratitya samutpada, this interdependent origination. This is emptiness. Nothing stands alone. It's all appearances of conditions and causes and fruitions, actions, intentions, results. In 2009, I did this radio show for a while for a local community radio station, and I called it Gnotruth. Then I finished school, I tried to work for a while, it all fell apart, I couldn't handle it, I didn't like it, and I wanted to devote all my energies to propagation of the Dharma. So in 2015, I went forth from the money-making life and started a website, Gnotruth, and I wrote a lot. And then I started focusing more on social media because I realized that's where people engage and share and learn. And I created the Gnotruth Facebook page, and from there things have unfolded nicely. Nowadays we talk about Buddhagang. Buddhagang is the community around Gnotruth. Just like we have Buddha, who's the awakened, the historical awakened one, and the ground of all, this open, ineffable awakeness. And then we have Dharma, which in my language would be no truth. This is what is directly experienced. And then we have Sangha, which is Buddhagang. Buddhagang is Sangha. We have a moderator admin team, and we run a few Facebook groups. One of them's called Buddhagang, and then the big one that we run is called Teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh. And a lot of our style comes from the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh. He's a wonderful Vietnamese Zen teacher. While he's great and his community is awesome, we also have our own vibe. And so we just call it Buddhagang. Just wanted to share a bit of the history. Thanks for being there. Bye-bye.